The Vatican has always been a place shrouded in secrecy, with countless mysteries that we still know very little about. But what if I told you there are some things you probably shouldn't hear because, once you do, they might change the way you see everything? What hidden truths are buried deep within the Vatican? That's exactly what we're going to uncover in today's video. So fasten your seatbelt as we dive into today's mystery. But first, you'll have incredible luck if you like, and subscribe before this video ends. The story begins in 1871, when the Kingdom of Italy successfully unified the nation and moved to seize the Papal States, vast territories that had been under the Pope's control for centuries. With the aim of secularizing the country, the Italian government passed the Law of Guarantees, promising to protect the dignity of the Pope while simultaneously stripping the Vatican of its political authority. For Pope Pius IX, the head of the Church at the time, this was unacceptable. He refused to recognize the new government, declared himself a prisoner in the Vatican, and issued a decree of excommunication against the king. From that moment forward, the Pope would not leave Vatican grounds, and the Italian state would not step inside. A political deadlock began, one that would last nearly 6 decades. During that time, the popes lived, worked, and carried out their religious duties within the confines of just a few hectares of Vatican land. Completely severed from official contact with the rest of Italy, the Vatican became a world unto itself, isolated, enclosed, and symbolically at odds with the nation surrounding it. It was not until 1929 that the standoff finally ended. The Lateran Treaty was signed between Pope Pius IX and Italy's then leader, Benito Mussolini. The agreement recognized the Vatican as an independent sovereign state with full political and diplomatic rights. In return, the Church agreed to relinquish its claims over the lost papal territories. The Lateran Treaty not only resolved nearly 60 years of tension, it laid the foundation for the modern Vatican as we know it today, a tiny state with immense global religious influence, where the Pope is no longer seen as a prisoner but as a sovereign head of state. For centuries, the Shroud of Turin has remained one of the most debated and captivating religious artifacts in the world. It is not just an old piece of cloth. It is a symbol of suffering, death, and the undying hope of millions of Christian believers. According to tradition, this was the cloth used to wrap the body of Jesus after his crucifixion. Imprinted faintly on its surface is the image of a man bearing wounds that match the descriptions found in the Bible. The shroud was first officially recorded in 1354 in France, and since then, it has become the focus of endless research, debate, and reverence. In 1988, 3 independent laboratories used radiocarbon dating to determine the age of the fabric. The results were shocking. The cloth appeared to date back only to the 13th or 14th century, hundreds of years after the time of Jesus. For some, it was clear evidence that the shroud was a medieval creation, perhaps a ritual object, or a symbolic work of art. But for the Vatican, the story did not end there. In a later study, Barbara Frail, a researcher from the Vatican Secret Archives, claimed to have discovered faint traces of writing on the surface of the shroud, something no one had noticed before. Through high-intensity image analysis, she said, she could make out fragments of text in ancient Greek, Latin, and Hebrew, arranged without clear structure but repeating the same message. This is the burial shroud of Jesus of Nazareth. According to Fraile's theory, the cloth may have served not only as a burial covering, but also as a rudimentary death certificate. In Roman times, it was not uncommon to affix or write identifying information directly onto burial shrouds. The inscriptions, she suggested, might have been hastily written by an official after the execution, confirming the identity and cause of death. Even so, her discovery has not gained broad acceptance in the scientific community, partly due to the ambiguity of the evidence, and partly because the shroud has become too sacred to subject to further testing and controversy. For the Vatican, the cloth no longer needs to prove anything. Its value does not lie in scientific conclusions, but in the depth of faith it continues to inspire. Hidden among the ancient stone structures and high surrounding walls of the Vatican is a passage that almost no one notices, a quiet pathway running along the fortified perimeter. It is known as the Passetto di Borgo, or more dramatically, the Vaipam Pope's Escape Tunnel. From the outside, it appears unremarkable, just a long stone wall like hundreds of other medieval defenses scattered across Europe. But within it lies a narrow corridor stretching nearly 800 meters, connecting the Vatican directly to Castel Sant'Angelo, the the former mausoleum of Emperor Hadrian, later transformed into a papal fortress and sanctuary. Construction of the Passetto di Borgo began in the 9th century under Pope Nicholas III, and it took more than 6 centuries to complete. It was more than a feat of architecture. It was a strategic declaration that in times of instability, the head of the church needed a way to escape, and at one point in history, that escape route would prove to be a lifeline. In the year 1527, Rome plunged into one of the darkest chapters of its past. The sack of Rome by the forces of Emperor Charles V. The city fell into chaos. Churches were looted. Monks, worshippers, and innocent civilians were slaughtered in the streets. Amid the anarchy, Pope Clement VII was forced to flee for his life. The Passetto became his only means of survival, carrying him out of the Vatican in secrecy and safety. Today, the tunnel still exists, occasionally open to the public on special occasions. Walking beneath its shadowy arches, hearing your footsteps echo against the ancient stone, you don't just feel the weight of history, you can almost picture the moment. A pope once rushed through the darkness, searching for the light. Beneath the very stones of Vatican City lies a vault of knowledge preserved through the centuries. It is known today as the Vatican Apostolic Archive, though until recently it bore a name far more evocative, the Vatican Secret Archive. The renaming, initiated by Pope Francis a few years ago, was meant to dispel the cloud of suspicion and intrigue that had long surrounded its contents. Yet the change in name could not erase the deeper question that continues to linger. What secrets is the Vatican still hiding? This archive is believed to contain millions of pages of documents spanning over 200 years. From papal decrees and diplomatic correspondence to court records and obscure chronicles of mysterious, even inexplicable events. Some believe it holds texts recounting encounters with extraterrestrial beings, records of supernatural miracles, and fragments of forgotten knowledge from lost civilizations. The Vatican claims that the archive is now open to scholars. In theory, anyone can submit a request to access the original materials. But in reality, it's not so simple. The application process is rigid and highly selective. Not everyone is allowed in, and even for those granted access, only a small fraction of the vast collection is available for viewing. Some documents have indeed been made public. These include, for example, the transcript of Galileo's 1633 trial, or the letter written by Mary, Queen of Scots, to Pope Sixtus V just before her execution. These reveal the immense historical value of the archive, but they also raise a sobering question. If these alone were enough to shake our understanding of the past, then what secrets lie within the materials that remain sealed? Today, the Vatican is attempting to digitize portions of the archive, but the progress is painstakingly slow, simply due to the overwhelming volume of material. According to some scholars, the most unusual records, those referring to UFO sightings or unexplained phenomena, likely remain tucked away in corners of the archive that few are ever permitted to enter. One researcher once remarked, "It's not that the Vatican doesn't have documents on strange events. The problem is they no longer know where to find them." Some have likened the Vatican Apostolic Archive to a kind of CIA vault for the Church, a place where what gets released to the public is merely the tip of the iceberg, while the most significant pieces are kept carefully and permanently hidden. Is the Vatican truly concealing great secrets about history, religion, or even life beyond Earth? We may never know for certain. But one thing is clear. With 53 miles of shelves packed with records, there is still a great deal the outside world has never seen. Among the religious relics said to be the most sacred within the Vatican, few spark as much debate as the true cross, the piece of wood believed to have once held the crucified body of Jesus Christ. According to Catholic tradition, after the execution of Jesus, the cross was preserved and eventually divided into smaller fragments. One of these fragments is now kept at the Vatican, displayed as a holy relic that draws thousands of pilgrims each year. Legend has it that the original cross was made from 3 types of wood: cedar, pine, and cypress. Some texts even claim that the 3 trees had grown together on a sacred plot of land that had once held the foundations of the Temple of Jerusalem and later became the source of the cross itself. It's a story rich in symbolism, but one question continues to stir controversy. How can anyone be sure that the remaining wood is truly part of the original cross? To this day, there is no definitive scientific evidence confirming the artifact's precise origin. Modern tests such as carbon dating have never been publicly conducted on the surviving fragments. Part of the reason is that the Church seeks to protect the sanctity of the relic, and any form of testing would require taking samples, something that could cause irreversible damage. Outside the Vatican, numerous churches and monasteries around the world also claim to possess pieces of the true cross. According to some researchers, the number of fragments currently claimed would be enough to reconstruct several dozen full-sized crosses, raising serious doubts about the authenticity of each individual piece. And yet, for many believers, the value of these fragments lies not in whether they are made of the actual wood, but in the faith surrounding a sacred story that has endured for over 2,000 years. For them, to witness an object believed to have touched Christ is in itself a deeply spiritual experience.